gentlemen, welcome to the Milestones podcast. I am your host, Jared LeMay, and keeping things real in the house, Thomas Barakat. How's life treating you, Thomas?
Jared, I would like to say it's different, but it's pretty much the same as usual. Looking forward to things opening up later this week and hopefully some more progress on getting things going again.
We're getting closer there. I know both you and I have our first shot, so we're halfway back to normalcy.
That's right.
So, anyway, all right. So today's episode, it's really exciting, super interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. But to do that, I need to take you back a few episodes to probably episode 7, where we spoke with Jarrett Coles from the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers about how valuable petroleum products are, not just to the average person, but to Ontario municipalities as well. From there, we continued on our journey through electric vehicles with Cara Clareman and on to how municipalities can help shape a net zero world with Toronto's former mayor, David Miller. If you missed any of those episodes, jump back, check them out, because they're all coming to a head today. So joining us on this journey is the business development specialist from Enbridge Gas, Joey Cyples. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so I got a lot into the intro, and people are probably wondering where I'm going with all this. There's a lot to it. And honestly, it's going to sound a tad counterintuitive to begin with, but hang with us. This comes with a really big payoff. So we were talking with Enbridge after they started working with the city of Hamilton on a renewable natural gas, RNG, which is probably what we're going to refer to it through the rest of the podcast, an RNG city bus. And for those listening, I'll put the link to all that information and that project in the show notes, and explain. It explains how these buses can actually make a community not just carbon neutral, but carbon negative. Right, Joey?
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty exciting fuel. We're trying to get the knowledge out of it across the province. But yeah, that's right. It can be better than zero.
Boom. Payoff right there, guys. All right. So to start things off and get us all on the same page here, Joey, can you give us the quick and dirty on this project with the city of Hamilton? And I use dirty loosely because carbon and all of that. Not getting into that.
Well,
I promise we'll get into the weeds a bit later on the bus and everything, but there's a lot of fascinating things about this renewable natural gas. And honestly, as I was preparing for this, the questions just kept popping into my head. So we're going to put you through the ringer here. So let us know the quick and dirty on this project with the city of Hamilton.
Yeah, so we partnered with the city of Hamilton for well over a decade. Hamilton is one of the early adopters of natural gas buses. And about 6 years ago, they decided they would move away from diesel buses and have natural gas buses. They worked their fleet up to 137 natural gas buses. Wow. However, conventional natural gas only offers so much emission savings. It's a very inexpensive fuel and offers a lot of fuel savings, but it doesn't help them, in the long run, get to net zero. So, I had some conversations with the city that you get to keep all your same technology, same fuel stations, same buses, dispensers, everything, just with a fuel switch going from conventional natural gas to renewable natural gas, that you can blend as much RNG or renewable natural gas into the bus all the way up to 100% carbon negative gas. They were super excited with the concept of, let's do one bus, let's show that it can work. Let's put 100% RNG into that bus. RNG has different carbon intensities, and we can talk a little bit about, different sources of RNG, but this RNG is carbon negative. And with 100% of this bus's fuel being that, it is not even Ontario's first, net zero bus. It's Ontario's first carbon negative bus.
Okay, there's like a ton to unpack right there. And the first thing I want to ask, as you were going through there, this bus, there any retrofits to it to allow it to use RNG, or it can be? You were saying it mixes right in with
into
gasoline?
The gas supply. Yeah, so I can get deep into the weeds on how the fuel actually moves through our pipe, but essentially any natural gas vehicle, whether that's there's snow plows in Oxford County, refuse trucks all across North America. There's F-150s that are running on natural gas. So any natural gas vehicle can run on renewable natural gas. So it's pretty exciting that there's a lot of these assets driving around Canada's roads right now that are natural gas, that with a fuel switch in the matter of months, by the time you execute the fuel deals and make sure that, the RNG projects are built and stuff, it's a very quick, cost-effective win to get to net zero, that you don't have to wait, 5-10 years for a technology to catch up. The technology is available today. It's just, getting these RNG projects built and RNG into vehicles, which is the best place to put the RNG rather than, replacing home heating.
Okay, so the big question and the elephant in the room, everybody's environmental nowadays, and why in the intro I referenced back to our episode with Jarrett Coles and the CAPP is one of the things he mentioned just offhand, and I'll probably clip this and throw it in the show notes too, is that natural gas or methane is actually worse for the environment than carbon. So why would a bus be running on something worse?
Yeah, so I guess when you say carbon, CO2 and methane, like they're
Right.
different chemical compositions, both made of carbon. But when you look from a global warming perspective, methane, which is CH4, and carbon dioxide, CO2, methane has a lot more global warming potential than CO2.
Okay.
On a 100-year life scale, which is kind of a benchmark that you'll see, methane's around 25, 28 times more powerful from a global warming perspective than CO2. Wow. But when you shrink that time frame, looking out, from 20 years from today, methane's like 87, I think might be 85% more powerful from a global warming perspective rather than CO2. So when people are they're focused on reducing emissions, everyone thinks of CO2 and reducing CO2. That's certainly important. However, when you look at the global warming potential of the different emissions, methane is way more potent. However, a lot of this methane is going into the atmosphere. So, think of a lot of landfills. Some of that gas is collected, might be burnt, might be used to generate electricity, but farm waste, whether it's manure or whatnot, organics. Anytime there's an organic material that is decomposing, it's releasing methane. So what these RNG projects do is, instead of having this methane that is very potent, from a global warming perspective, you collect that methane, you clean up that biogas, you can inject it into a natural gas distribution network, and use that to, heat your homes, heat your businesses, and run these natural gas vehicles. So what you're doing is taking this really bad methane that's going to the atmosphere and putting it into a vehicle. Yeah, it combusts and it releases CO2. But when you do all the inputs on the methane that's emitted all the way to the, tailpipe, emission of that CO2, it is a wonderful, climate change story that, needs to be told.
So that's really interesting, because that's a lot of carbon in the atmosphere that a lot of, and I'm not talking CO2, I'm talking like global warming emissions in general, that people don't think about. Like they don't think about the farms with the cow. Well, I mean, they think about cows and things like that, but they don't think about where their garbage goes to, where their sewage processing, what happens to all of that. So essentially what you're saying is that all of this stuff gets collected, and the methane that's off-gassed from that is compressed, condensed, and used in these buses.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jared. So,
not just buses, apparently any vehicle, right?
Any vehicle and any home and business. So anything that uses natural gas can use this renewable natural gas. And so other technologies, whether it's hydrogen or battery electric, the carbon of that is well understood. So if you have renewables generating electricity, you have an electric vehicle, that's a great climate change story. And it is, and I 100% agree with that. However, that solution doesn't solve this methane issue of farms, wastewater treatment plants, landfills. As long as there's humans and animals and organic material on Earth, there's going to be this organic waste. And we're starting to hear municipalities talk about, what are we going to do, right? I think by 2025, there needs to be a green bin program to collect these organics, to stop them to go from landfills. Then the question is, what do we do with these organics? And, one thing you can do is make compost, but that's from an emissions reduction perspective, not the best use of those. It would be take those organics, put them in an anaerobic digester, make RNG that can be a revenue generator for the city if you sell it. Now you don't get the credits, the carbon reduction credits if you sell it, but you can use it to heat your civic center, run your Zambonis that are cleaning your ice, or fueling your refuse and transit buses. And depending on where those organics are coming from, this can very quickly help a city cost effectively get to net zero and beyond, right? So
Wow.
if you have a fleet that's 100% carbon negative, that's now offsetting maybe some carbon that you can't get rid of in a different process. So
And
yeah.
yeah, that's when I said in the intro, it's sort of counterintuitive. You're actually making carbon, but you're removing something that's 80% more damaging to the environment.
Yeah, 80 times on that 20-year
80
scale.
times, sorry,
So
80
yeah,
times.
so what this solution does is it helps, the province and the city solve its organic waste problem, which needs to be solved. And
Yeah.
it helps solve, the vehicle and their building emissions problem. So, a municipality can use its own organics, make its own fuel to make its own carbon negative fleet or carbon negative buildings, right? So it's a very exciting story that I'm happy to talk about today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, so yeah, the environmental impact, that's it seems relatively minimal since you're taking all this harmful gas out of the environment and putting something like, I mean, less harmful, but yeah, not near as bad. And so I guess the big question then, and it comes with electric cars and hydrogen as well, is how does this compare to all of the other fuels out there or vehicle propulsion systems? I know a lot of cities are looking into electric buses. How would this compare to an electric bus?
Um, they complement each other. So I don't think it has to be an either or. So a lot of people, when they're looking at, how do we reduce emissions in transportation, say, there's a lot of thought on, well, there's only going to be one technology, right? You'll hear, Tesla say, well, hydrogen is, not going to be the way to do it. And then, right. So
Yeah,
there's hydrogen, there's battery electric, there's RNG. There's a place for all these different fuels. And I can get into why, but from an emissions perspective, people understand tailpipe emissions, right? So
yeah,
if a vehicle does not have a tailpipe, it's identified as a zero emission vehicle, and that's where a lot of the general knowledge is. However, when you look at any of these fuels, you need to look at life cycle emissions. How is that fuel made? How is that fuel transported? And then how is that fuel used, right? So from an electric vehicle perspective, yeah, you might have that electric vehicle, but what's generating your electricity? So
right.
here in Ontario, we have one of the cleanest grids in the world, which is great. But a lot of regions in Canada don't have that. There's some provinces that are burning coal, right? So
Yeah,
if coal is your primary source of electricity, effectively that battery vehicle is running on coal, right? Even though it's an
yeah,
electric vehicle. So when looking at any of these fuels, what we're saying is you have to look at life cycle emissions, right? On top of, do you have, diesel auxiliary heaters, and there's limitations to some technologies, and um, fleets or vehicles that can't be electrified. So maybe there's infrastructure issues within a certain city or municipality, or maybe there's route concerns. So
okay,
battery technology is improving, but however today not all routes and all buses can be electrified just due to maybe the weight, the terrain, climate, length of the route. Maybe there's not the ability to do on route charging. And the great thing about renewable natural gas or natural gas vehicles is they have the same performance as their diesel counterpart. So same range, you can refuel a natural gas vehicle in 5-6 minutes. It doesn't take hours. You
And if
can
you're in a
have the
pinch,
same climate. Yeah, so
if you're in a
it's
pinch, you can mix with diesel or regular gas as well.
for sure. So when municipalities are looking at, okay, make the decision, we want to get off diesel, what should we do? And there's a lot of reports that are looking at, what would fuel cell electric look like? What would battery electric look like? The other piece would be, what would renewable natural gas look like? And then a combination of them, right? So some municipalities are like, oh, maybe there's only 5 routes that I can electrify, and we'll electrify those. Well, your other 15 routes that you're waiting for, you can get off diesel today with renewable natural gas and deploy multiple technologies. And we're starting to hear that tune change quite a bit. CUTRIC, the Canadian Urban Transit Research Innovation Consortium, they recognize that. So we're starting to get out about it. But that's a kind of a quick rundown on the technology and the emissions of the different technologies.
Is there a cost saving to switching over from diesel to RNG for like a municipality who's looking to change that? Like you said, it could happen today, just like that. Can they save money while they're doing it?
Yeah. So when you look at it, you have to look at the total cost of ownership. So from a vehicle perspective, natural gas buses are maybe about a 10% premium, so $50,000 to $60,000 more than the diesel counterpart. Maintenance savings, so City of Calgary and City of Hamilton say that they save about $5,000 per year per bus on a natural gas bus versus a diesel bus. Then when you get into fuel, it's what emissions profile do you want, right? So we'll start off at 100% conventional natural gas, and we'll work our way over to 100% carbon negative renewable natural gas. So if you're running conventional natural gas, the price is in that 20 to 30 cents a liter range. So there's substantial fuel savings of conventional natural gas over diesel. Like the city of Hamilton and Calgary came out, I think they're saving about $20,000 per year per bus by getting off diesel and going to natural gas. However, natural gas, you're saving maybe 15, 20% of your emissions. You're not getting to net zero. So now when you want to look at getting 20% reduction all the way to 100% or greater, now you have to introduce renewable natural gas, which is at a premium relative to conventional natural gas. However, on a unit of energy basis, like we use gigajoules as our unit of energy. Diesel, if it's $1 a liter, is about $24, $25 a gigajoule, which is about the price of renewable natural gas. Okay. So you might be paying the premium on the bus, then you have to build a fuel station. So there is some incremental capital, but when you add all that up and then divide by what that deployment would cost per bus, you're talking maybe $200,000, $250,000 per bus to deploy renewable natural gas. Where when you look at other technologies, there's a lot of announcements that have been recently made. They're in the $700-800 $1 million per bus deployment with some federal funds. So
I was going to say, just on that, do these buses, or do these qualify for any like subsidies in terms of greening fleets or any of that? Because I know a lot of municipalities are taking advantage of that to switch to electric buses because the funding is there and it's available to them. Now, would these qualify for that sort of thing?
Yeah. So on that, Enbridge, we have a municipal program, so we can help fund a lot of the incremental capital. So anything on top of what you would pay for diesel, Enbridge can manage that and turn it into an operating cost. But from a government grant fund perspective, we're doing a lot of work on that. Most of the work is trying to get decision makers to understand life cycle emissions versus just tailpipe emissions. There's using CUTRIC as an example again, they're one of the first agencies to now recognize RNG as a zero emission vehicle, that they are starting to look at life cycle emissions, not only tailpipe emissions. So it's changing. Is the funding green lighted today? I wouldn't say yes. we're hoping, to have that recognition, because the idea is, and I had mentioned that this solution helps solve the organic waste issue within a municipality and the transportation emissions, and do both, right? So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying don't do electric. Do make electric.
Part of a
I think
healthy
passenger
diet.
cars should be electric. It's just, instead of
Right.
waiting and only doing a certain portion of your fleet, you can do a huge chunk of your fleet with multiple technologies.
But that's the funny thing about RNG too, is it's solving a problem people don't really know they have. I mean, I didn't even think about where organics go or where our water gets cleaned or anything like that until you mentioned it. And it's like, oh my God, yes, all of that stuff puts out like methane. And
Yeah, I'm
methane's
not gonna
horrible.
lie. I feel pretty good about myself when I put stuff in the organics bit. I feel like I'm helping the environment.
You're damaging the environment.
Yeah, but
Thomas.
now it's unless it's going to an RNG bus. I don't know. Maybe I should.
Yeah. So, people know that, you don't want to put the organics. Maybe they don't quite know, throwing those organics into the landfill, what that actually means to the environment. People are starting to get it, and municipalities are getting it. They're asking the questions. We're meeting with a lot of these municipalities. So there's knowledge of renewable natural gas is getting out there. There's a lot of interest in building, these production facilities. What the next step of the story is, what do we do with this RNG? And there's a lot of initial interest on reducing, just say home heating emissions.
Okay.
Which needs to happen. It needs to happen. However, looking at things out of a cost per ton emissions reduction perspective, the best place to put that RNG is into a vehicle and offsetting diesel, not the home heating. And
So-
the reason,
go
ahead, Jared.
No, I was going to move off topic, but you sounded like you had a good point there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, especially for municipalities to understand, because they're wondering about, reducing the emissions of their arenas and, maybe selling some of it and, any of their buildings. But when you look at a cost per ton emissions perspective, as I mentioned, natural gas is about, so this is the commodity cost, is about $3-4 a gigajoule, where RNG is, that $24-25 a gigajoule. So it's 8 times more expensive than conventional natural gas. However, when you look at diesel fuel, the RNG and the diesel fuel have very similar fuel price. So when you look at going from diesel fuel to RNG, the fuel price is very similar, yet you have 100 to 200 plus emissions reduction. However, going from conventional natural gas to RNG, you're now going from a very inexpensive fuel to a very expensive fuel, and natural gas is already 20% fewer emissions than diesel fuel. So it's any municipality that's looking at RNG, it's a great idea. But when you're looking at what the takeoff is going to be, take a serious look at transportation, because it's a great use of reducing your emissions and very cost effectively.
So with talking about vehicles and focusing mainly on vehicles with this, we've mentioned buses, and we know we can do this in buildings and so on and so forth. If a municipal fleet was looking at RNG, would it behoove them to look into working on their bigger vehicles as well? I mean, like dump trucks, backhoes, excavators, things like that. I mean, I know as an electric car, I guess aficionado, I'll put that in my name tag.
Enthusiast, Jared.
Enthusiast. Thank you. Enthusiast. As an electric vehicle enthusiast, I can't see electric vehicles or electricity being used on these larger vehicles that have to put in a lot more work as they stand right now. Would RNG be a nice compromise for that, as opposed to paying for diesel? I mean, like you were saying, diesel and RNG are roughly similar in terms of price. Can they carry the same power? Could RNG carry one of these larger vehicles while reducing emissions that these vehicles put out?
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned some, off-road type vehicles. That technology's coming along. There's a lot of testing happening on it. I mentioned earlier, Oxford County, their snowplows are running on natural gas. Refuse vehicles, Enbridge, our fleet, we have F-350s running on
Wow.
natural gas and larger vehicles. So when you get into passenger type vehicles, there's not a huge movement in natural gas here. In India, very much so, but we
Wow.
haven't really seen that in North America. It's more of that medium heavy duty range that you see the vehicles.
Yeah.
I would love for excavators and backhoes and all that stuff. That technology is not quite available. I get that question asked a lot because that's not easy to electrify, and
No.
how do you bring, electricity remotely, to these sites where
Exactly.
there is natural gas solutions. There's some companies that they call it a virtual pipeline. So you can
Right.
take gas from, they call it a mother station, but like a compression hub, you fill up a tube trailer, almost like a 4-fuel diesel type thing, and you can bring natural gas, to any yard. However, the technology for a lot of that off-road stuff isn't available today. However, the public works departments and stuff, when you're looking at, aggregate vehicles or snow plows, yeah, certainly, buses, refuse. Refuse is natural gas is almost becoming the norm for a lot of municipalities,
Oh,
both
really?
for their in-house and contracted.
Hmm.
A recent example is the City of London. They started procuring. I think they now have 6 natural gas vehicles, refuse vehicles. So yeah, it's not just transit. So public works, when you're looking at different technologies, natural gas vehicles could fit for a lot of your fleet.
Wow.
That's interesting. And let me ask you this, Joey. This might be kind of an odd question or something that maybe is obvious to you, but maybe not so obvious to someone who's not always looking at this sort of thing. Would a municipality have to have its own source of this stuff to be able to power the RNG, or can it get it from somewhere else? Like a big city, for example, might have a lot of this waste, organic waste, all that sort of thing. But what about a smaller rural town or whatever? Like, would they? Is there somewhere for them to get that to source that fuel?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this will kind of get into the whole nomination process and how, a company like Enbridge manages their gas and the way we've done it for over 100 years. But yes, a municipality could have its own RNG project. So they would make RNG. It would get injected into our distribution network. There's a meter that's set up on that. So Enbridge, we know when gas comes into our system and what the sources are. So that RNG, it's all accounted for on this is how much, how many molecules or whatever unit of energy or volume, however you want to measure it, of that RNG project went into our system. It's logged from an accounting perspective. And then that city can allocate that RNG to any of its assets. So, this meter at City Hall or this meter at their, bus fleet or, this one at the refuse, or they might, decide to have a marketer to sell the gas. So a lot of the renewable natural gas today is sold out of province. It's going to other provinces and out of the country. There's a huge demand for RNG in the U.S. The latest figure, the state of California, over 90% of the fuel used in their natural gas vehicles is renewable natural gas. When looking at the US as a whole, I think it's now 53% of all natural gas vehicles are running on RNG. So think of Amazon just made an announcement on natural gas vehicles in the US. Waste Management just procured, they're procuring 6,000 vehicles. So it's very big in the US. We're catching up here in Canada. So back to that nomination thing. If a municipality was looking to get an RNG and they don't have a project, it can be purchased if they wanted to keep it in province or out of province. There's marketers, and Enbridge helps coordinate that. We can help match. Here's an RNG project, and you're going to buy that RNG and have that go into your vehicle or your buildings. And it's all through our nomination process. So it's the gas is all connected.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talked about it earlier, sort of alluded to it a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about this, the city of Hamilton's example. Yeah, you've got a paper on your website about that I said I'm going to link to. What I guess how did this all start? Like,
Yeah, did you have to go to their council and pitch it, and what was, or is it just something that their public works department or transit department started or wanted to start?
Yeah, so we work very closely with the city. So their natural gas fueling station, we maintain and take care of that station for them. So they just have to worry about, pulling their bus up and fueling it up. Everything, on that gas and maintaining that station, we do that for them. So we work very close with them. And there was a lot of interest on both parties on demonstrating, right? So there's been a lot of talk, in Ontario on renewable natural gas in vehicles, but it hadn't been done yet anywhere. So, both parties, we were talking on what would it look like, maybe to start off with one vehicle to demonstrate, this great story. So what Hamilton did is they signed a contract with Storm Fisher. So it is an RNG production facility located in London, Ontario. They take farm and organic waste and they make RNG and inject it into the grid. So now a portion of that RNG is now going to the city of Hamilton for that bus. And then, to kind of make the bigger splash, the bus is wrapped and stuff to try to catch people's attention on this fuel.
I believe we saw that in the last issue of the Milestones magazine. You guys had an article in there with that bus on the front.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
check
it's
that out. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so it's driving around Ontario or on Hamilton's roads today. Both parties are very excited about it. We're excited to, hopefully have more of their vehicles. So in Canada today, and this is a very quick win for the federal government. You guys are probably well aware that there's a target to have 5,000 zero emission vehicles by 2024, 2025. Well, in Canada today, we have about 1,000 natural gas vehicles.
Wow.
Buses, sorry, not just vehicles,
just
buses. Only one is running on RNG. So it is a zero emission bus using that, life cycle emission process that with a fuel switch from natural gas to RNG, those 1,000 vehicles in less than a year could be net zero without building any new stations, buying new buses, anything. So
wow.
When decision makers are, contemplating, quick solutions, here's a very quick solution to reach 20% of, our national target just by switching from these natural gas buses over to RNG.
And it can be done within an election cycle, so that's very important.
Within an election cycle. So, the part will be getting, there are over 100 biogas production projects in some form of development right now. The Canadian Biogas Association just did a recent report, because what we get asked a lot is there enough RNG? Like, where is this gas? And it's an excellent report stating we're only accessing maybe like 13% of the easily accessible biogas in Canada. Wow. Only a fraction of this biogas is turned into RNG. A lot of it right now is either vented or flared. So it's not even really being used. So a lot of these projects can switch and put the upgrading facilities on them and make RNG injected into the grid. So there's enough of this biogas in Canada to fuel our fleets. So these projects are happening quick. The thing is, the municipalities, they're saving a lot of money right now, right? So I had mentioned that they're saving $20,000 per year on a bus. Now it's, everyone's looking at making that investment to now further reduce their emissions, and switching from a natural gas vehicle to an RNG is a great win for municipalities, provinces, and Canada. So, we're trying to point out that there's 1,000 vehicles that can be switched right now. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at on the Canada-wide.
That's it seems like Canada's poised to we're already in a really good position to take advantage of this. And I mean, not only is it something easy to do, it's something responsible to do. And I'm sure like a lot of the listeners here, like email me afterwards if you have heard of this, but I mean, a lot of them didn't know about natural gas and methane just being off gassed from these facilities. And it sort of seems to me that it's a problem we didn't know we had, but in focusing on CO2 emissions versus methane, it's like having two taps or two faucets, one of them dripping and the other one being full blast. With methane being the one going full blast and CO2 being the drip, and they're trying to take care of the drip and wondering why the bathroom is flooding.
That's a good analogy, right? And it is complicated. You're dealing with different departments that are looking at different things, but when you look at things holistically, whether within your municipality or within the province or within the country, there's a whole bunch of different carbon sources, and it's how do you reduce them the quickest, most cost-effective way, right? So when you look within your micro environment of your municipality, you know, there's a lot of landfills and there's a lot of wastewater treatment plants and there's this methane and there's biogas that can be utilized within your city. However, you have, you know, transit and public works that are different segments within a municipality making decisions. So it's having all the parties come together and how do we reduce our emissions within the municipality? And there's a great circle economy story. And the city of Toronto is a perfect example of this. They built a RNG project in Dufferin. So they're producing RNG and they're using it. They decided to spread it amongst all their budget. So they didn't put it all into refuse and, you know, they're not putting it into buses or just their buildings. They're spreading it out. But here's a perfect story of a circle economy. So with the city of Toronto, their garbage trucks are picking up organic waste that's going to an anaerobic digester that's making fuel to run their garbage trucks, right? So it's it's an amazing story for municipalities. It's a circle economy. Yeah, we're very excited, you know, to partner with the city of Toronto on that, and a lot of other municipalities are, you know, asking the same questions. How do they do something similar?
And like David Miller said in a couple podcasts before, these bigger cities are doing it, so it's proof of concept for these smaller municipalities. I guess to your point, they've just got to start talking as departments to see where this can be used or utilized, as opposed to other ways of energy usage.
Yeah, like there's a lot of biogas studies that happen within a municipality and recognizing, hey, there's a great opportunity with renewable natural gas. But then the big question is, what do you do with it? And the quick answer that a lot of folks think about is, I'm going to sell it. You know, it's a revenue source. And that's a great way to generate revenue. But if you want to reduce your emissions, and that's high priority, using that gas to offset, you know, diesel emissions, and, you know, a portion of that, you know, reducing emissions within, you know, any of the city assets. It's an excellent fuel to do that very cost effectively. But yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Wow. So what's in the future of renewable natural gas? What's down the pipeline? Are we looking, I know you mentioned bigger vehicles. We talking like houses? God, I don't know. Anything else?
Yeah. So a lot of cool stuff happening. So I mentioned a lot of these biogas projects that are happening across Canada. So we're catching up from a production standpoint. You know, we're starting, you know, with the city of Hamilton on the vehicle front. You know, I foresee a lot of these natural gas vehicles switching over to renewable natural gas, especially as the carbon levy starts to increase. Diesel fuel and conventional natural gas are going to become more expensive, where the price of renewable natural gas is going to stay very, very stable.
So this this RNG, does that not account for the levy as well? Or does it not?
Yeah, so we're, you know, the framework hasn't been finalized, but it's, you know, the expectation is that you wouldn't pay carbon tax on the renewable natural gas.
Wow.
But I don't believe that has been finalized yet.
Okay.
But so the value proposition of renewable natural gas is going to continue to get better. Each province is at a different place. So out in British Columbia, Fortis BC is introducing a lot of renewable natural gas into their distribution network. You're seeing the same thing in Quebec with Énergir and Gaz Faire. Here in Ontario, Enbridge just recently announced we call it the Opt Up program. So homeowners will be able to opt up and pay $2 per month to bring renewable natural gas into our system.
Wow.
Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of promotion across the province on that. So, we're starting to green our system too. So I think what we're going to see is a lot more renewable natural gas projects and a lot more renewable natural gas, both reducing emissions of distribution systems, but also reducing emissions in fleets.
Wow. That's
and it's growing very fast in the US. Like RNG, it's around 400% growth in the last 4 or 5 years. So almost all the 53% across all of US natural gas vehicles are running on RNG. And that number is climbing. It was like 40%, I think, last year. So it's they have a different regime on credit. So, there's RIN credits and clean fuel type credits. Right. We're waiting for, the clean fuel standard to happen here in Canada. But the same thing is expected to happen. So the liquid stream of the clean fuel regulation, there's going to be a requirement to reduce emissions or buy credits. These natural gas stations that'll have renewable natural gas filling up vehicles are going to be eventually able to generate credits that can be sold. So, the city of Hamilton will have a revenue generator with their natural gas fueling station for their buses. So I think we're going to see a lot more natural gas stations being built across Canada and RNG going through them, which is happening in the US as we speak.
So Joey, interesting. So you mentioned that the US is kind of like a lot further ahead than we are here in Canada on this sort of thing. And you mentioned the there's a clean fuel standard. Are you saying that one of the big reasons why is that we don't have enough? We haven't. Are you saying government regulation isn't there yet? Is that we need more government regulation on this sort of thing? Normally, it's the opposite, right?
Yeah. So it's in early days of technology adoption, usually there's different investments into different technologies. We're seeing it in all the technologies. I would say that's how it went very quickly in the U.S. is with their regiment on it. U.S. has dropped their emissions substantially, and a big reason is stop burning coal. They're using natural gas, and then now RNG is happening a lot. So the state of California, their entire pool of RNG is now carbon negative.
Wow,
it's amazing. Wow. Like I think the pool is around it's under -10, -7, -8 grams per megajoule of CO2 equivalent. RNG is the only fuel that can do that. Electric, the best it can get is 0 emissions, and that's assuming you run on 100% renewables. So, hydro, wind, solar, nuclear. 100% of that, you'd have 0 emission electric. However, since you're pulling all this methane out of the air, that's how you're able to get, carbon negative with the RNG. And the state of California's RNG supply is negative now, and it's forecasted in the next couple of years to be -100 grams of CO2e. So wow. It is an amazing story that's happening in California. It's happening across, the rest of the U.S. And it's starting to come a lot faster here in Canada too.
So it's not that, in a sense, that there's a lot of pushback against this sort of thing. It's more so that we have to kind of give the incentives to help this adoption kind of move ahead. The US has kind of done that more so than Canada. And that's really, it's not that people are saying, or municipalities are saying, we don't want this, it's not good for us.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's all incentives. It's a lack of knowledge around it, right? If you took a poll on, the average Ontarian on, do you know what renewable natural gas or RNG is? A lot of folks don't quite know what that is yet.
Well, I mean, this episode here just proved that. Thomas and I had no idea.
I had no idea.
And it's not just renewable natural gas. It's that the garbage we throw out, the waste we flush down the toilet, that's all producing methane and is actually worse for the environment. I mean, from working with ExxonMobil chemical films, I knew that in these oil industries they flash the methane because it makes it better for the environment than just letting methane go itself. But I like you don't think you throw something into the compost, you think, okay, I'm doing something good for the
Yeah,
environment.
exactly.
Yeah, and without knowing how great it is, or can be for your municipality to do
Exactly.
that, and
Yeah.
getting so we're doing a lot of work in the Canadian Biogas Association is doing a lot of work on this is what biogas is, this is what RNG is, and this is what it means for the environment, and how this is such a wonderful story. And I think as that gets out more, it'll help motivate residents to not throw that banana peel into the garbage, to put it into the green bin program, right? Recognizing if I throw this into the landfill, or if I throw it onto the road or whatnot, this is what it's going to cause from an environmental perspective. So, the understanding of the consequences of throwing those organics away, the knowledge is getting out there, and it's moving very, very fast right now. Us talking to you guys, we talk to a lot of different trade organizations. We're doing a lot more promotion, around renewable natural gas.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and this is also a good indicator that municipalities should be really looking into the green bin program as well. I mean, that's a great collection agency for gathering materials.
Yeah, 100%. We meet with a lot of municipalities. So in my role, I'm more focused on the transportation side. We do have an RNG team that is, heavily involved working with municipalities on these type of projects and making investments into them. So with that mandatory green bin program, everyone's trying to figure out what they're going to do with these organics. So it's I think that's what's accelerating, the knowledge around RNG and these projects, and there's a lot of interest around it. Completing that cycle. So now there's a great way to make or to use these organics. What are we going to do with it? And transportation is a heavy emitter of emissions, and RNG is a great place to put it in.
That's fantastic. That's that's. So yeah, like I said at the onset of this podcast, a little counterintuitive, but boom, big payoff. So awesome, Joey. Thank you so much for joining us, discussing this fascinating endeavor. Honestly, my mind's a little bit blown right now. Before we sign off, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with before we end?
Yeah, I think if there's any questions or you want to ask more, any of the listeners, please reach out. My information's on Enbridge's website. I don't know if Ontario Good Roads Association, can share my info.
Yeah, definitely.
Be happy to meet with folks and talk with them, on how we can partner. So Enbridge, we're committed to reducing our emissions. We want to work with municipalities together, reducing our emissions. We're willing to, help put money in to help fund a lot of these capital projects, and together building these, circular economy type solutions to reduce, your organic waste emissions, make some fuel, and reduce your emissions in both your transportation and your building heat too.
Awesome. Okay, so Joey, I'll get if it's okay with you, I'll put your email address in the YouTube video in the comment or the notes below.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Hopefully, if this goes beyond Ontario, those people can reach out to you too, and we can make this a little global.
That's right.
Global thing. So, that's and for all the municipalities out there, this is the opportunity to get in on the ground floor of this fantastic project. Save a little bit of money. Definitely help green the world entirely. I mean, this will help take those really harsh emissions, methane that we've talked about in the past, and I mean, you can use it on your bigger vehicles, your smaller vehicles, even your buildings. If you're serious about meeting global emission standards, definitely take a look into this. Definitely give Joey a ring or an email or something like that. This is a fantastic opportunity and something that that would be fantastic for the country as a whole. All right, awesome. That's fantastic. I'm just going to leave it at there. So Joey, thanks again for joining us. everybody else out there, don't forget to check out OGRA on our social media accounts. Just search Ontario Good Roads on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And as always, if you have any questions for us or for Joey, give us a shout at podcast@ogra.org, and we'll forward those on to Joey. For the YouTube video, we'll leave his email address in the notes below. We'd be happy to pass them along. Also, don't forget, registration for OGRA fall courses, including Snow School, is in full swing at ogra.org. Maybe you can talk to your manager, or if managers are there, about getting your snow plows hooked up to RNG. Go over there, check out the courses, and see how OGRA can help you take control of your career and fast track your skills development. And until next time, everybody, take it easy.